What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Today is September 19th, 2025, about 10:10 p.m. where I'm at right now. And we are continuing our 14th book in our Book to React series. This is episode 7 of The Thorn and the Carnation, written by Yahya al-Sinwar, the former leader of Hamas, who died fighting against the Zionist occupation of his homeland during the continued genocide of his people in Gaza. This is his novel that he wrote while in prison in the early 2000s. So far, we've read about 16 chapters of this text, and today we will be finishing part 1 of The Thorn and the Carnation and reading also chapter 18, which is the beginning of part 2 of The Thorn and the Carnation. Going out to Kamal, another blessed day by Allah, comrade. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. May God keep all of you safe. May God bless all of you. As we continue reading this text, I encourage all of you to listen, pay attention, learn something, grasp something, give commentary as well. Jump into the chat. We will be replying to all the comments. Without further ado, let's pick up where we left off. Chapter 17, and I suggest all of you go watch all the 6 episodes prior to this one to catch up on the storyline. Jamal and several of his brothers from Hebron drive their cars heading to Surayef to visit their friend Abdul-Rahim. Knocking on the door, Abdul-Raheem, living at the door, rushes out to find his uncles and his elder friends, most of whom he knows from visiting them with his uncles since childhood. He greets them with a smile. "Welcome, please come in," and makes way for them to the guest room, while his uncle Abdul-Rahman comes rushing, welcoming them. They sit and talk, and Abdul-Raheem considers himself one of them despite the age difference of over 25 years. One of the challenging things about this book is I believe the translation probably wasn't done correctly. What is living at the door? I don't know what that means. Maybe the translator was, not that sharp in English. Continuing here. The women prepare lunch and bring it to the room's door, where Abdul-Rahman and Abdul-Raheem come out to bring it in. After lunch, they go out for a walk at the edge of the village with Abdul-Raheem accompanying them. The land is fertile plains, but lacks good cultivation, and has remains of wires stretching over long distances. Abdul-Rahman points to the wire, saying, "This is the ceasefire line. Beyond it are the Palestinian territories occupied in 1948 and 1967, and part of our village's lands to the west of the wire. Our family had 40 dunams confiscated in 48, and this part continues our land by a few dunams, which we cannot farm due to its proximity to the border. Don't forget this, Abdul-Raheem." Abdul-Raheem nods, muttering, "How can I forget, uncle? How can I forget?" Jamal murmurs, "How can he forget? How can we forget? How can one live without his heart and limbs?" They drive back to Hebron, with Abdul-Raheem sitting next to his uncle. On the way, dozens of cars bearing yellow license plates indicating they are Israeli move in both directions. Jamal lets out a frustrated sigh, saying, "Then what about these settlers? They have swallowed the land and are never satisfied, never stopping at any limit." Entering the city as the Maghrib prayer call begins, the driver heads towards the Ibrahimi Mosque. The car can barely move due to the congestion, as hundreds of settlers and occupying soldiers guard their way to the mosque. They walk to enter the mosque with tens of guns drawn by the occupying soldiers. The Jewish settlers, wearing small decorated hats on their heads, long unkempt beards, and wrapped in striped cloths with many threads dangling, hurry to the mosque, jostling its people and stopping them at every barrier. The young men enter the mosque, where the carpet has been removed from the back part, and barriers of iron pillars with thick ropes define the prayer area. Only a quarter of the mosque is for prayer, with the other 3/4, along with the outer courtyard and 2 attached halls, filled with Jews. "Ah, it's Saturday," Jamal mutters. In every corner, a Jew stands reading from a book in an incomprehensible and rapid manner, swaying back and forth. The call to prayer is made and Jamal leads the prayer. The congregation stands behind him, responding thunderously to the supplication, not of those who have incurred your wrath or of those who are astray. Amen. Jamal begins reciting with a beautiful, resonant voice. Exalted is he who took his servant by night, until Allah's saying, and we have prepared hell for the disbelievers as a bed. Al-Isra, verse 8. They bow, and the Jewish worshippers behind them sway while chanting from their Torah. I left the lecture hall from my last lecture, which was late as the sun was about to set, and found my cousin Ibrahim in a nearby hall. Greeting him with peace, he returned the greeting. I asked if he was heading home, and he replied yes. We set off together, each carrying our books, surrounded by many students heading home, with a bus parked at the university gates, gathering students from southern regions to return to their homes. We walked back home on foot. From a distance, a military jeep stood watching the students leaving the university. Ibrahim glanced at them and said, "Who would have believed that Gaza would actually have a real university as it does now? Do you remember, Ahmad, when I decided to enroll at the Islamic University, what your mother's reaction was?" I nodded in agreement. Across the street, a car filled with members of the Islamic bloc, Ibrahim's friends, called out to him. After exchanging a few words, he returned to me, handing over his books, saying, "Take these with you. I'm going on an errand with the guys and might be late, so reassure the government," referring to his mother. Smiling, I took his folders and books, thinking about our government, my mother, and her way of dealing with Ibrahim, her love for him, and his for her, as memories began to flood my mind. I was jolted back to reality by the honking of a car that nearly hit me as I crossed a main road without paying attention. Surprised, I dropped the books, scattering them under the streetlight at the corner. As I bent down to gather them, mixing my books and papers with Ibrahim's, I tried to sort them out. A paper from Ibrahim's documents caught my attention. As I was placing it back, I noticed the report's title, a report on Hassan al-Saleh's movements and practices. My curiosity piqued. I quickly gathered the rest of the papers, allowing myself to read what was written in that tightly sealed intelligence report carried by Ibrahim and signed, "Your brother, 23. So Ibrahim and his group's activities extend beyond student activism, party rivalry, and mosque prayers. Ibrahim was unusually late that night, causing my mother to worry. I reassured her by jokingly saying he'd be fine, but inside I wondered what danger he could possibly be in. My mother, with tears welling up in her eyes, expressed her deep concern, insisting that a mother's intuition is never wrong. I watched as her worries couldn't be easily dismissed. After performing the Isha prayer, my mother sat on the prayer rug for nearly 3 hours, visibly anxious until Ibrahim finally returned home. She immediately questioned him about his whereabouts and his late return. Trying to lighten the mood, Ibrahim jokingly asked if she preferred a written or oral report. However, his attempt to calm her failed as she pressed for answers. Eventually, Ibrahim explained he had been helping a friend resolve a problem, but my mother was not easily convinced, warning him not to stay out so late again. While observing their interaction, I knew I had to confront Ibrahim about the report I accidentally read. Once my mother went to bed, and after Ibrahim prepared his own meal, I sat next to him, whispering my apology for reading the report on Hassan. Ibrahim was taken aback, unsure of how to react to my accidental discovery. I assured him his secret was safe with me, but inside a storm of questions raged on. The next day, Ibrahim insisted on accompanying me to university, using the opportunity to confide in me about his concerns regarding Hassan. I realized he was trying to divert my attention from the true origin of the report. I confronted him, making it clear I knew the report's information was too detailed for an ordinary observer. Our conversation shifted to what actions might be taken against Hassan, revealing Ibrahim's deep-seated intention to rid the community of Hassan's menace. Despite the gravity of his words, Ibrahim reassured me that everything would be handled in due time. Pardon, I have to sneeze. Sorry. Sorry about that. If you don't know, I believe cousin Hassan of the main character Ahmed was a troublesome youth who ran away when he became the neighborhood sex pest, and he went to go live with the Israelis, and he pops in and out of the story every now and then. He recently returned because he broke up with his Jewish girlfriend and got kicked out of the house, and he's been a menace in the neighborhood, in the community. And he's also worked with the Israelis by distributing, basically pornography and other illicit things like drugs as well in the community. So that's why they're plotting on Hassan. And that's the Hassan I'm thinking about. At least that's who I think they're referencing. Keep in mind, there are multiple characters throughout this text who have the name Hassan. Ibrahim was saving up with my mother from the surplus of his earnings from his construction work. That day, when he returned from the university, he approached her requesting 1,500 dinars from those savings because he wanted to buy a car. This car would help him in commuting and in transporting his work tools, saving him time between work and study. I was aware that he was deeply planning to end the matter with his brother Hassan. My mother gave him the money and informed him that there were still about another 1,500 dinars left. Ibrahim bought a Peugeot 404, a very popular and widely prevalent type of car in the sector, all of which were used and old, at least 15 years, but by the standards of the camp, it was a luxury. Muhammad leaves the apartment he rents with a group of students in Bizerte, heading to the university. Upon entering, he immediately notices that the atmosphere is tense, unusual as the students, both boys and girls, prepare themselves for clashes with the occupation soldiers as usual. They prepare piles of stones at different corners, ready their masks, and set up barricades. Then they organized into a massive demonstration that marched out of the university, chanting against the occupation and settlement, and for Palestine. It wasn't long before the occupation patrols arrived and the clash began. The soldiers took cover behind their vehicles, and the students retreated behind stone walls. The stones rained down on the soldiers, who began firing bullets and tear gas at the students. All student forces participated in these events. In such instances, when all student forces participate, the clash becomes more intense and violent as the spirit of competition fuels the students' readiness for the clash and ignites their enthusiasm. The confrontations lasted several hours, forcing soldiers to retreat several times, while dragging one of their own bleeding from his head or face after being hit by stones. The soldiers began firing not just to disperse the protesters or to injure them, but with a clear intention to kill. Within minutes, two students, Jawad Abu Salame and Saib Dahab, as usual, the students' fury was unleashed, and they began chasing the soldiers, who were forced to retreat to the outskirts of the town, away from the university and the students. The bodies and the wounded were taken to Ramallah Hospital, and night had fallen. By morning, news of the martyrs and clashes in Bizerte had spread across the nation, igniting demonstrations in all areas, declaring a general strike, and extending confrontations between the protesters and occupation soldiers everywhere in the Islamic University. The students erupted in massive protest, hurling their stones at the occupation patrols, and the events spread to the camp and across the city, especially the Sujaiya neighborhood where martyr Saib Dahab resided, as well as to the south of the sector, especially Khan Yunis, where martyr Jawad Abu Salame lived. The events continued over the following days, with stones being thrown at the occupation patrols stationed beside the university, and passing by it, a large force from the occupation army arrived and besieged the university. It was clear they intended to discipline us to become good and calm boys. Hundreds of soldiers surrounded the university and attempted to storm it multiple times, but retreated every time before the flood of stones raining down on them. Time passed until evening approached, making it apparent that we would have to spend the night in the university. However, a vehicle carrying some dignitaries was allowed into the university, and they negotiated with the student activists and university officials. They informed them that the military governor did not object to the students leaving the university in specific groups of 10 every 5 minutes, so as not to cause a gathering and extend the protest into the city. They were assured that the soldiers would not harm any of the students. Everyone agreed to this, and we began to exit in groups of 10, with the soldiers directing the movement to one of the side streets, with each group followed by the next. I was in one of the groups, and when we reached a fork in that street, the soldiers directed us to turn, and we found hundreds of soldiers standing with their batons and their vehicles blocking the street, turning it into a detention camp. Under beatings, we were forced to sit, squat on our knees with our hands over our heads and faces towards the wall, after taking our ID cards for verification. It seemed they had lists of activist names as they sorted them into a nearby area under beating and kicking, then allowed the rest to leave after returning their ID cards. I was not classified as an activist for any of the student forces. I took my ID and fled from the place. Ibrahim was detained along with about 100 other students for 3 days, where they were severely beaten and subjected to unimaginable humiliation. The military governor thought he had disciplined us and taught us a lesson to become good, smart kids. Several days later, upon entering the university, it was immediately clear that conflict was imminent. A group of activists, led by Ibrahim, were preparing for confrontations. Once the students gathered, stones began to rain down on the patrols and military vehicles passing by the university. Within half an hour, the university was surrounded, and military buses began to amass hundreds of soldiers. It was evident that this time, the beating we were to receive would be multiple times what it had been previously. But every incident has its own narrative. It was time for a confrontation, and we were ready to face it as needed. The majority of students masked themselves to avoid the cameras and binoculars mounted atop a high-rise building opposite us, and stones began to rain down on the soldiers hiding behind their vehicles and plastic shields, who responded with gunfire and tear gas. It was clear that the students were seeking revenge for the beatings received days before. A large armored vehicle was brought in to spray hot water. It approached the university's gate, and despite being pelted with stones, managed to break through the gate and advance towards us. We countered with a heavy barrage of stones. The soldiers couldn't advance alongside it, so the vehicle retreated, and the situation became a back and forth of attacks until the afternoon. Then the sound of a military tank tearing through the ground and breaking through the university's back gate was heard. A student screamed through a loudspeaker, "A tank has breached the university from the back gate." Suddenly, more than 700 students turned towards the tank instead of fleeing, racing towards it in a scene close to madness. There was a clear understanding among the tank's crew that they would be crushed under its tracks by dozens, but they were confident that the mob climbing atop the tank would tear them apart. The tank turned around and exited the university. That's crazy. That's insane. This is an insane scene. The crowd reached the Thorn gates and began to seal it with whatever they could find: stones, concrete blocks, barrels, and tree trunks. Most of them returned to monitor the soldiers from the wall. As evening approached and the mediators came for negotiations, their attempts were rebuffed with harsh words. We waited, wondering what would come next. Ibrahim tried to hide a wide smile unsuccessfully. The situation calmed slightly when suddenly the loudspeakers of dozens of mosques across Gaza City blared in unison, screaming for jihad. The occupying soldiers are surrounding your sons and daughters in the university. Come out to rescue them. God is the greatest. God is the greatest. The community from every neighborhood started to gather, forming massive protests from all directions towards the university. The entire city of Gaza had erupted in chants of "God is the greatest, God is the greatest," and "death to the occupation." A state of security chaos prevailed, and immediately orders were given for the forces surrounding the university to disperse and secure the city. The forces turned and spread out, only to be met by throngs of angry people in front and thousands of enraged university students behind, feeling victorious. Ibrahim exited the university in his car, saw me, and stopped to take me with him. He said he wasn't heading home, but wanted to take a tour of the city to observe the situation. The city was alive. Men, women, children, and elders were out on the streets, burning tires everywhere, barricades closing off roads, and groups of panicked soldiers were spinning around, clueless about what was happening around them. Ibrahim's smile was broad, and he made no effort to hide it now. God be praised. The people are fine. Thank God, he continued, noting the thousands of citizens and students heading towards the military governor's headquarters, pelting it with tons of stones while the soldiers couldn't protect their heads or shoot indiscriminately. A few of Mahmoud's friends came over for a visit, clearly concerned. They sat down, and shortly after, I served them tea prepared by Mahmoud's wife. They continued their conversation, discussing a young Fatah member who had recently been arrested and was responsible for one of the specialized military groups. He had confessed to everything during interrogation. Mahmoud asked how that was possible, having heard that the young man was strong and stubborn. One of them explained that although he was indeed resilient, he had been taken to the birds, a slang for informants or spies used in interrogation, and there he confessed. Curious, I interjected, asking what the birds were. They explained that these were a large group of spies who assist in interrogations by pretending to be patriotic prisoners in regular jails. They attempt to extract information from detainees who the intelligence services have been unable to break. The pretext they used was the need to extract information for the officials, fearing the arrest of the cell, or for any other reason. Sometimes, when they see a detainee defending himself as respectable and not an informant, they continue to accuse him. Thus, some detainees feel compelled to reveal their secrets to prove they are not informants, falling victim to such tricks and deceptions. At the Islamic University, there's a complete separation between male and female students, each studying in their dedicated sections without any mixing. However, when going to and from the university, they meet in the streets, parking lots, and bus stops, where most adhere strictly to public decorum, even going above and beyond in compliance. Despite this, a few students might interact more freely once outside the university premises. Female students are required to wear the hijab as per the university's rules, with the majority wearing it sincerely due to the conservative nature of Gaza's populace. Some, however, wear it only upon entering the university and remove it or push it back once they leave, revealing parts of their hair. One of the girls from my neighborhood who attended the university often crossed my path to and from the institution. Without exaggeration, she was truly as bright as the full moon. Occasionally, I would steal glances at her as she walked, her gaze fixed to the ground, heading towards her destination without a hint of hesitation. Gradually, I found myself drawn to her, too shy and fearful to even greet her. One day, our eyes met, sending a shiver through my body and stirring deep emotions within me. After that brief exchange, I started timing my walks to coincide with hers, feeling a sense of comfort just by being on the same street. I began to wonder if this was love, the emotion often spoken about. When our eyes met again, my heart raced at the sight of her. On the third occasion, her smile and the flush of her cheeks as she hurried away left an indelible mark on me. Eventually, I was content just to watch her from a distance, not daring to hope for more than that. It sufficed to know that I had loved and that she understood it well. It sufficed to know that I had loved and that she understood it well, especially as she sensed my eagerness to see her every other day. I knew I had to cherish this feeling without seeking more, at least until I graduated and was in a position to propose to her properly as I was raised. Aww, good Muslim boy. My cousin Hassan's situation was a constant worry for Ibrahim, who had filled my head with more concerns than once. He took me along to monitor Hassan's movement to verify the information in the report. We confirmed several details. We saw him meet with Abu Wadi, park his car near the headquarters, enter the Saraya showing a special ID to the guards, and disappear for hours. We observed his frequent visits to well-known collaborator stores and his disgraceful harassment of women on the streets. It became clear that Hassan was involved in morally corrupt activities, leaving no room for doubt or interpretation. My mother was strict about us not staying out late. If one of us tried to sneak out, thinking she was asleep or busy, she would immediately question where we were headed. Ibrahim knew this would complicate his plans regarding Hassan, so we agreed to return home early, study, and sleep, then sneak out around midnight. This plan went on for weeks until one night Ibrahim returned troubled, changed, and went to bed without speaking. After that night, he never involved me in any mission to monitor or follow Hassan again. About a week after that night, Ibrahim told me, "Ahmed, there's no need to stick to that schedule anymore. Take it easy and do as you wish." I found this odd, but didn't question his reasons. On one of the following nights, as I was returning home late, I took a detour and noticed the car of the intelligence officer Abu Wadi, parked by the roadside. He was standing next to it, dressed in civilian clothes as usual, pointing at something on the wall of the mosque. I veered into an alley to avoid running into him and waited until he left. Then, as I passed the spot where Abu Wadi had been, I noticed he had marked the wall with symbols and some numbers. When I got home and entered the room, I found Ibrahim reading one of his university textbooks. I told him what I had seen, and he looked at the clock, commenting that if it weren't so late, he'd have gone out to see it himself. But he didn't want to risk our mother's wrath for leaving at such an hour. We decided to wait until dawn to go for the morning prayer. Before reaching the marked wall, Ibrahim cautioned me not to point or make any gestures, but to talk to him about it without indicating it physically. He saw the markings clearly as we approached. After we passed, he whispered, "There are many such markings in various places." I thought they were municipal markers for sewer or electrical services, but they're actually for intelligence, meaning they're for very secret and dangerous operatives, as known agents wouldn't require such elaborate methods. We prayed at dawn and took another look at the markings on our way back, with Ibrahim muttering to himself about deciphering the day, hour, and location from them. That afternoon, Ibrahim took me for a drive, instructing me to jot down certain details. We circled the streets, slowing down at walls marked with similar symbols, compiling dozens of them. After the evening prayer, we returned home, where Ibrahim compared the numbers, concluding that they matched dates, hours, and possibly minutes, essentially a code for intelligence meetings with their agents. I took this opportunity to broach a subject I had long held back on, suggesting we use his device on this information. His sharp look of anger made it clear he didn't appreciate the reference to the source of the report on Hassan. So wait, do they have like some technology? Okay. All right, so all right. And look down the markings on the way back. Okay. All right. Okay. Despite our previous... So, anyway, his sharp look of anger made it clear he didn't appreciate the reference to the source of the report on Haman. Okay? Despite our previous agreement to leave the matter behind, I realized I didn't actually know what I wanted from this conversation. We went to sleep after Ibrahim thoroughly destroyed the notes, leaving the matter unresolved. And that's the end of part 1 of the Thorn and the Carnation. I guess we'll be reading part 2. I don't know if part 1 is supposed to symbolize the thorn, because, much of those chapters, 1 through 17, are about the brutality of the occupation, how it breaks people down mentally, economically, of course physically as well, through sheer acts of violence and terror. I don't know if the Carnation is like the beauty of the struggle or something like that. Very interested to see where the title comes from. The word thorn, I don't remember being mentioned in part 1. I think it could just be interpretive to mean the thorn. Maybe part 2 is the carnation, but let's find out. And continuing here. All right, let me just take a quick... Ooh. All right. Anyway, chapter 18. I was deep in sleep when I awoke to the sound of men causing a commotion in the house. I rubbed my eyes and looked at my watch. Its hands pointed to 3:30 before dawn. I heard my mother's voice screaming, "What do you want?" Before Ibrahim and I could rise from our bed, the door to our room was struck with such force that it flew open, and several gun barrels were brandished and aimed at us. Then came the voice of Abu Wadi. "Don't move, stay where you are." He entered with a number of soldiers and pointed at Ibrahim, saying, "You are Ibrahim?" Ibrahim responded, "Yes, I am Ibrahim. What do you want?" Abu Wadi laughed and said, "Why the hurry? Take your time, Ibrahim." He looked at me and asked, "You are Ahmad?" I replied, "Yes." He said, "Get up and come here." He took us and stood us against one of the walls. The soldiers were ordered to search, and they ravaged the room, digging through everything. Abu Wadi himself searched us personally, but found nothing on us. The soldiers turned the room upside down, but didn't find what they were looking for. He flipped through Ibrahim's papers and notebooks, reading what was inside them. Then he gathered all the documents he was suspicious of, placing them in a box that one of the soldiers had brought, and ordered it to be taken to the car. My mother was screaming, "What do you want? You've wrecked the house. May God guide you." Dozens of soldiers searched every corner of the house. After about 2 hours of searching, they tied my hands behind my back, placed a cloth blindfold over my eyes, and did the same to Ibrahim. They took us from the house while my mother screamed, "Where are you taking them? You criminals, may God curse you." They threw me into a jeep as one would toss a sack of potatoes. Then I felt another sack of potatoes thrown on top of me, and I knew it was Ibrahim. I was shivering from intense fear and worry. Ibrahim must have felt it because he whispered, "Hang in there. What's the matter with you, man? Shivering? There's nothing. It's just a matter of days and we'll be back home." Then a strong slap landed on the back of his head, and a soldier screamed in broken Hebrew, "Shut up, donkey." The convoy moved and then stopped. We guessed we had arrived at the barracks. They took us out, pushing and kicking, then dragged us through narrow alleys and corridors, and then up a long, narrow staircase. A man who spoke better Arabic took charge of me, asked me to stand still and not move. He placed me against the wall, and I heard him do the same with Ibrahim, asking him for the same. A long time passed without anyone speaking to me. All I heard were the sounds of doors opening and closing, and voices speaking in Hebrew, which I did not understand. After a long while, the owner of the voice dragged me, saying, "Come," and pushed me into a room. He lifted the blindfold from my eyes. I found myself in a small room with a desk, behind which sat a young man in civilian clothes, smiling and saying, "Please have a seat." Gesturing to a chair in front of him, I sat down, my hands still tied behind my back. He asked, "Where is Hassan?" I looked at him in surprise and answered, "At home." He asked, "Which home?" I said, "Our home." He exclaimed in surprise, "Hassan is in your home?" I said, "Yes." He looked at the papers in front of him on the table and then asked, "Which Hassan is that in your home?" I said, "My brother, Hassan." He said, I'm asking about Hassan, your cousin. Where is he?" I said, "I don't know." He asked, "How do you not know?" I said, "He hasn't lived with us for many years and we don't know where he goes or what he does." He asked, "When did you last see him?" I said, "I don't remember." He asked, "Approximately." I said, "Years ago." He asked, "And when was the last time you mentioned him at home?" I answered, "I don't remember." He asked, "Approximately." I said, "A very long time ago. We have forgotten about him." He asked, "Why?" I said, "He caused us a lot of problems with the neighbors and we expelled him from the house. We no longer care about him. He means nothing to us." He asked, "Have you heard that he was beaten about a year ago and stayed in the hospital for about 2 months?" If you don't remember or you didn't watch the previous episode, I believe it was Ibrahim and the main character Ahmed. They did beat Hassan. They beat him with sticks and broke his legs because he was causing so much trouble in the neighborhood. I said, "I heard." He asked, "Who beat him?" I said, "How would I know?" He said, "What's your guess?" I said, "I don't know, but it could have been the family of one of the girls he was chasing or people he had a dispute with over something." He asked, "Like who?" I said, I don't know, but that's what I thought at the time, and he really doesn't matter to us. He said, so you don't know where he is now? I said, yes, I don't know, and I don't want to know. He called the man who had brought me in and asked him to take me out of the room. He put the thick cloth sack back over my head, pulled me out of the room, and placed me next to the wall. Then I heard them dragging Ibrahim in and shutting the door forcefully behind him. After what could have been an hour, I heard the investigator call for the man Abu Jamil. So he went to him, and I heard him pulling Ibrahim out and standing him next to the wall. I guess he asked him the same questions. I wondered to myself why they were asking about Hassan. Where is he? Is he missing? Or is he running from them? I remained in that state, standing with my face towards the wall, receiving a slap or kick that made me forget my fatigue and exhaustion. My legs could no longer support me, so I collapsed to the ground, sitting. The soldier came, hitting, screaming, and kicking, demanding that I stand up. The fatigue and exhaustion had overwhelmed me to the point where I no longer cared about the beating and kicking. They struck me repeatedly to make me stand, but I would not stand willingly. Each time they lifted me by the shoulders and stood me up, I would collapse back to sitting, and they would beat me again and lift me, only for me to return to sitting. Eventually, the investigator came and ordered them to leave me on the ground. True, I paid a heavy price for my sitting, but I felt immediately relieved. Life surged in the interrogation section, the torture chamber, suddenly as dozens of investigators entered all at once, indicating it was daybreak and the start of their new workday. After a while, they took me to one of the rooms, and when they removed the sack from my head, I found myself in front of about 7 investigators. Before I fully grasped my surroundings, one of them kicked my legs forward, and another pushed me in the chest backward, causing me to tumble towards the ground. They caught me and laid me down. The iron of the handcuffs dug into my back, and they pounced on me. One on my chest, choking me. Another stood on my stomach and began stomping on it with his feet. The third separated my legs, and the fourth started pressing on my testicles. As the minutes of this ordeal passed, they would stop all at once, and the one sitting on my chest would ask, "Where is Hassan?" I answered, "I don't know," and they would start again. Then they would stop and ask the same question, and I would give the same answer, and the cycle would repeat. Then he would stop and ask, "Ibrahim, confess what happened. Where is Hassan?" I answered, "I don't know," many times until they were convinced I did not know where he was, and they left me. They called the soldier outside to take me away. I was placed next to the wall where I sat. He tried to pull me up and beat me, but I had resolved my situation since the previous night. I heard Ibrahim's screams, and they're yelling at him. They seemed to be using the same methods on him. Ibrahim was denying any knowledge of Hassan's whereabouts, but he was responding sharply and cursing at them, which led them to increase the pressure on him. However, in the end, they took him out and placed him next to the wall. After a few days, they put me in a car blindfolded with my hands tied behind my back and my legs bound, and the car drove off for about an hour before stopping. They pulled me out, and I stumbled every time we passed steps or doors. They stopped me for a while next to a wall, then pulled me a short distance. I heard the sound of an iron door opening, and they pushed me inside a cell with black walls as they lifted the sack from my head. Sitting in the cell, after a while, the door opened, and another young man was pushed into the cell after they removed the sack from his head. He sat next to me, and after a bit, introduced himself by his name and where he was from, mentioning he had been under interrogation for 2 months. They brought us our lunch and dinner, and after we ate, we heard noise. The doors opened, and 5 young men wearing brown prison shirts were pushed into the room. They were being beaten with batons as they tried to defend themselves and retaliate. The young man sat down, and they began to introduce themselves, mentioning their very high sentences and that they had been in prison for 10 years for discovering an informant and attacking him with razor blades, which led the police to punish them. Then they asked for our names and why we were there. The young man with me started to share his story and what he hides and what he reveals, while they asked him to lower his voice, assuring him they would relay this information to the revolution outside the prison to take precautions. Yeah, they're glowing. They're glowing. Those sound like spies. Those sound like spies. I would not talk to them. Then they turned to me, asking for details. I remember Mahmoud's friends talking about sparrows, and I was sure it was a trap to find out what I had. But the truth was, I had nothing to hide. I answered them very briefly as they probed to see if I was hiding anything. After a long while, the door opened again and the guard called for me. He put the sack over my head, pulled me out, and then put me in another cell. I was sure they were now reporting back to the investigation officer about me. Later, a policeman took me to the interrogation room where one of the investigators told me that they had confirmed I was not hiding any information, but they would detain me for 3 months in administrative detention, and my interrogation was over. The guard took me a distance away, brought me to the clothing store, and handed me the complete set of items given to every prisoner, then took me to a section of the prison with several rooms housing dozens of prisoners. It was a completely normal prison life. The prisoners welcomed me warmly, got to know me, led me into one of the rooms, arranged my beds and belongings, prepared tea for me, and readied the bathroom. I showered, rested, and had my meal. In the evening, they all sat down, including me, to get acquainted. They celebrated my arrival and treated me with great honor. At the end of the celebration, the room's leader came to me and informed me not to discuss my case with anyone. The next day, the organizational and security officials would come to explain everything to me. It was strictly forbidden to talk about this matter with anyone else. The next day, the two officials came. We sat together in a corner of the room. They introduced themselves and mentioned they knew my brother Mahmoud, my cousin Hassan, and our neighbor Abdul-Hafiz, along with other information that made me trust them completely. Then they started asking me about my case, why I was being interrogated, and why I was arrested. I explained in detail that I was arrested for no reason I knew of, and they kept asking me about my cousin Hassan, whom I didn't know the whereabouts of, nor understood why they were asking about him. I mentioned that Hassan doesn't live with us anymore. We expelled him from our home years ago, and we don't know where he is or follow his news. They repeated their questions many times, then thanked me and left. After a few days, the jailers called me by my name, took me to the storage room, took back the items they had given me, and returned my belongings and clothes, informing me that I was going to be released. They took me to the prison door and left me outside. Breathing the fresh air again, I couldn't believe I had been released and was still wondering about Hassan. Why were they asking about him? What was this investigation for? I couldn't find an answer. When I reached home, the news had already arrived, and my mother came rushing to greet me with ululations of joy. And the neighbors came to congratulate me and thanked God for my safety. I asked my mother about Ibrahim. I said, I don't know. He was with me in the early days of the investigation. Then I didn't hear anything about him. I told my family what happened to me. A week later, while we were sitting at home in the afternoon, there was an eager knock at the door. It was the voice of al-Bashir saying Ibrahim has been released. We jumped up to greet him, and amid ululations and congratulations from every direction. He asked me what happened to me, and I told him. He shared what happened to him during the investigation, which was almost exactly what happened to me. At night, when we were alone in our room, I asked him what happened and what it all meant. He said, I don't know, but it seems Hassan is either running from them or is missing. I asked if he knew that those who came to him were spies and that it was a trap to find out what he knew. He laughed and said, that wasn't the trap, Ahmad. Surprised, I asked, what then? He explained, that known trap is there so you fall into the real trap. They know we've heard about traps and spies and interrogations, so they set an obvious first trap for someone to discover and be wary of, swelling with pride that he has fooled them. Then they take him to that section to get entangled there. That's the real trap, I asked. You mean the section and those in it are spies? And they are? He interrupted, saying, yes, yes. I thanked God that I had no information to hide because I would have told them everything since I had no suspicions of them. Interesting. Psychology, man. Just go to prison and don't say nothing, man. Don't say nothing. I don't know nothing. I've never seen anything. I was born yesterday. Ibrahim shared that when he was with them and denied any knowledge of the situation, it seemed they sensed his suspicion of them. They threatened him, suggesting they believed he might be an agent or a spy, and announced this in the room, imposing a state of emergency on him. They began to treat him as if he were a spy, intending to provoke a reaction that would lead him to defend himself. To prove he was not a spy, they expected him to start revealing any secrets he had. They even brought him documents signed by officials from the movement, complete with red seals, encouraging him to speak truthfully and not hide anything. He assured them he was being truthful, which was that he had absolutely nothing to hide. And if he had spoken about anything, he wouldn't have been released from prison for years. I looked at him closely and asked, "But you haven't told me where Hassan is." He answered indifferently, "Forget about that matter. The important thing is he won't bother us, tarnish our reputation, or trouble anyone anymore." I realized he had fulfilled his promise and thanked God internally that I had never been privy to his secret or involved in his actions. So, as I might have been implicated and caused trouble for both myself and my cousin. At the first opportunity after my release from prison, I went out early, waiting to see Intisar, my beloved, and to be seen by her, hoping that if she had heard of my arrest, she would be reassured of my safety upon seeing me. I caught a glimpse of her emerging from the alley. She glanced at me, a fleeting look, then averted her gaze and her lips murmured what I believed to be Alhamdulillah, thank God. Or perhaps I just convinced myself of that. So she must have known I was in prison, and here she was thanking God for my safety. I was overwhelmed with indescribable happiness and raced ahead to the university so she could see me and be sure of my safety. One evening, after Ibrahim's release, while we were sitting in our room and studying for our university course, our mother entered the room, greeting us as she carried a tray with 3 glass cups and a teapot. She pulled the table towards Ibrahim's bed and sat on the edge of the bed, leaning back next to her. She poured the tea, handed each of us a cup, and took long sips from her own, saying to Ibrahim as part of her conversation, "Look how beautiful the children of Mahmud, Hassan, Fatima, and Tahani are. A son is the most precious thing in the world, and you only understand that feeling when you have a child of your own. Oh, how beautiful it is to become a mother or a father. These are the most beautiful feelings and emotions in the world." I realized she was segging into another topic, so I shot Ibrahim a stealthy glance. He caught my sly look and responded with a light smile, as if to say, "I understand what your mother is hinting at." Seemingly realizing she had extended the introduction, she said, "Ibrahim, I want to marry you off and celebrate your wedding." He laughed heartily and responded, "It's not a problem, my aunt. May God keep you for us, our blessing. But don't worry about me. I won't do anything harmful or dangerous. I'm still young, and it would be better after graduating from university, God willing." She replied sharply and angrily, "I will marry you off," meaning I will marry you off. And why wait until after graduation when you have around 2,000 dinars with me, which is more than enough for your wedding? He tried to interject, "Auntie," she cut him off. "Be quiet. The matter is settled. You're going to get married," meaning you're going to get married. The important thing now is who you will marry. Tell me, and I will handle the rest. Do not argue with me about it. And she nudged him several times in the side, implying it wasn't the time for this discussion as it was still too early and premature. She asked if there was a particular girl he wanted. He looked surprised and said, "No, I told you I haven't thought about anyone." And she left the room with the tea tray. Seeing an opportunity to gauge his stance on a sensitive issue, I asked, "Do you truly not want to get married?" He said, "The thought never crossed my mind before your mother entered the room, and I hadn't considered it before." I asked, "And now?" He reiterated, "I think it's not the time for this matter. It's still too early and premature." I pressed, "Honestly, is there someone you love?" His surprise grew. "Someone I love? What are you talking about, man?" I prodded. "So you mean to say you don't love anyone?" He countered. "Who said I loved to begin with for me to deny it?" I asked, "And you've never loved at any time?" Seeking honesty, he admitted, "This is a complicated and lengthy topic. About 5 years ago, I saw a girl and felt that I loved her. I began to watch her come and go and felt that I loved her, and she reciprocated my feelings. The matter didn't develop beyond that. But when I started praying and attending the mosque regularly, I understood that such relationships are prohibited before seriously considering marriage. So I stopped watching her path. Yet I felt my heart was still attached to her and adored her, and I don't think there's any religious issue with that." Aww. But after Hassan's return and his stay in the camp, the troubles he caused, and my involvement in political life, feeling that I became part of the national concern, the concern of this country and its sanctities, I thought it over and decided that I should even stop thinking about love. It seems, Ahmad, that we are supposed to be deprived even of this feeling, just the feeling. We're under so much stress from the occupation and the oppression from the Zionist regime. Should we even love? Man, that's deep. That's deep. He was speaking from the depths of his soul, as if undergoing a rebirth after labor pains. I wondered if he was exaggerating. To my knowledge, revolutionaries are often lovers and poets. He laughed and said, that's true, Ahmad, but not among us, not in the Palestinian people. That's true for revolutionaries in Vietnam, Cuba, and People's China, but it seems our destiny is to live with only one love, the love for this land, its sanctities, its soil, its air, and its oranges. It appears this land refuses any rival in our hearts, competing with the love young men may have for anyone else. I laughed and said, indeed, you've combined all three, a revolutionary, a lover, and a poet. What you've just described is poetry, a paean to your jealous beloved. But I don't believe this conflicts with loving one of the beautiful girls. Loving them is part of loving the homeland. He sighed and said again, don't you want the truth, Ahmad? I replied, nothing but. He said, as the saying goes, in this land the wicked have left nothing for the righteous. Ahmad, the occupation has contaminated everything, our land, our sea, our streets, and even our souls. How many love stories have I heard that started passionately in this country and ended up as tools for the occupation to whip the backs of lovers, using the noble, sacred relationship at the hands of collaborators to pressurize lovers into betraying their first love, Jerusalem. Is there room left in our lives for love and passion? Damn, that's deep. That's deep and that's hitting. That hits you right here, man. He's saying love can be a weakness. Because if you love a woman, the Zionists can say, hey, we're going to kill your wife unless you cooperate with us. You get what I'm saying? Or we'll separate you from your wives and children unless you cooperate or unless you leave this land. You know what I mean? Very deep, powerful, hitting you in the gut. I insisted. I'm sure you're exaggerating and confusing your religious beliefs and legal judgments with the practices of the occupation and its collaborators, resulting in a heavy, sharp blend of ideas. He smiled and said, who said that religious concepts can be separated from the reality of life and its interactions? Ahmad, I decided to cut this cord after I had loved a girl with all my soul and senses. Even though my relationship with her remained within the bounds of the permissible and chaste. I loved her from the depths of my soul, and when this intense and sharp feeling of the ideas pressed on me, I asked myself, do I truly love her? And I answered myself with certainty. So I told myself, if your love is sincere, then in the confines of our lives as Palestinians, you must devote yourself to a love that avoids all that could open doors to corruption and stop the breezes that might touch the lover's face or play with her hair. We are not like others, Ahmad. We are not like others. Good night. He went to his bed, pulling the covers over himself. I responded, and to you as well, covering myself as I pondered every word he had said, wondering if he was truly exaggerating or if we are indeed not like others. Our story is not like that of the Irish, the Khmer Rouge, or the Pakistanis. This is a Palestinian story. Its complexity centered around the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is very deep. This is one of my favorite sections of the book. I love this section right here because it's asking some very deep personal questions about how occupation and oppression affect the mind of the person who is dedicated towards the struggle, but still at the same time wonders about the things that separate the struggle. You get what I'm saying? Like, every struggle for liberation is inherently different, but they also have qualities about them that make them the same as well. But it's very interesting to hear this from a Palestinian, that maybe we're not like the Irish who are fighting against the English for their freedom. Maybe we're not like Native Americans who are trying to resist European occupation of their lands. Maybe we're not like, the Rohingya in Myanmar trying to fight against the extermination of their people and their expulsion from Myanmar. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's very interesting to hear that from a Palestinian, you know what I mean? And I'm all for international solidarity, you know what I'm saying? But, this division that people have when they think about their own people and their own struggles, it's very fascinating to hear this from the Palestinian point of view. We are not like, they not like us, essentially. This is the Palestinian version of they not like us. Anyway, I'm going to continue here. This individual began walking towards me on the side road. My heart raced, fearing my rapid beats were audible to him. Rubbing my eyes for a clearer view, as he came under the streetlight about 10 meters away, I recognized him. My breath caught. It was Faiz, one of Ibrahim's close friends and activists. I thought maybe he was sent by Ibrahim for surveillance as well. But before I could further ponder this thought, a speeding car turned onto the side road, stopped and opened its back door. Faiz got in and the car sped off. I was utterly convinced it was the intelligence officer's car, Abu Wadi, and I was almost certain that Abu Wadi was in the car with at least a 95% certainty. Conflicted thoughts swirled in my mind. Was this a dream? Was it reality? Was this a scene from a crime or spy movie? What should I tell Ibrahim? Should I tell him the truth or conceal it, pretending nothing happened? Torn by these questions until Ibrahim's car arrived. As he drew closer, I checked the area, found it empty, emerged from behind the bush, got into the car, and we started driving back. He asked if anything happened, if I saw anyone, if the intelligence officer came. I remained silent. Noticing my unusual state, he pressed, "What's wrong? What happened?" I replied, "You won't believe what happened," he urged. "What happened?" I said. "The man came and Abu Wadi took him in his car." He exclaimed, "Really? Who was the man?" I said. "That's the problem," he asked. "What's the problem?" "What problem? Who was the man?" I said, "Faiz." He exclaimed, "Faiz? Who?" I said, "Your friend," he yelled. "What are you saying? What? And no one else but him?" I confirmed. Yes, it was him in flesh and bone. I saw him with my own eyes, 100% without a doubt. He asked, "Abu Wadi came and took him?" I affirmed yes. Abu Wadi stopped his car next to him, opened the door, he got in, and the car drove off towards the settlements. Ibrahim pulled over, slowing the car until he stopped, engaged the handbrake, turned off the car, and rested his head on the steering wheel, muttering, "Oh my God, what's happening here? I can't believe it. This is unbelievable. Impossible." Repeating impossible countless times. I asked, "Why impossible?" He began to speak, then stopped abruptly and continued, "Oh God, it seems I've lost my mind. Let's go home." I took the driver's seat and drove home in silence. As we neared our house, he asked me to head to Sheikh Ahmed's house. But before we arrived, he requested me to stop and wait far from the Sheikh's house until he returned. He was gone for about half an hour and then returned. We headed home without either of us uttering a word. My sister, Miriam, served us dinner, but he barely ate a few bites. We drank tea, each holding a book, looking at it without seeing the letters. After an hour, he looked at me and said, Ahmad, I know you don't need reminding, but I must say this matter is closed and you must not tell anyone. I assured him without a doubt. He continued, we still can't be certain that it wasn't just a series of coincidences. We need to examine things to be 100% sure. I agreed, asking, but how? He said, we'll see, we'll see. Good night, pulling his cover over himself. Then, turning towards me, he added, if you meet him, you must not let on any change in your behavior. I assured him, understood. Each of us pulled our covers over and laid our heads on our pillows, tossing and turning in our beds as if they were made of coals. When we got up for the Fajr prayer, he whispered in my ear, trying to smile, is it permissible for us living this life and seeing what we see to love and to be passionately in love, Ahmad? That's when I decided to end my love story, if it could even be called that. And I understood the meaning that our story is a bitter Palestinian one with room for only one love, one passion. A bit of a cliffhanger right there, which is, I guess, a cool way to leave it off because we have to find out what's going on with Faiz. What does love have to do with this, etc. But very good chapter. I like chapter 18. Chapter 18 was good. 17, not so much. Some of these chapters are hit and miss. Once again, the writing style and maybe the translation in and of itself isn't that good. But it's still a very complex book, fascinating book, gripping book at times, mundane at times. But we read some exciting stuff like seeing the tank break into the university and the university students fight back. That whole story of resisting the spies that were sent into the prison when they were being interrogated, stuff like that is very captivating and interesting. So there's some good sections here. I'm not going to just hate on this book, man. I kind of really like this book. But I hope y'all are enjoying this too. This is episode 7 of Book React 14, The Thorn and the Carnation by Yahya Sinwar. We will read possibly 2 or 3 more chapters tomorrow. I got some time tomorrow and definitely on Sunday as well. And let me know what you think of this book. And if you have any others you think we should read, put them in the chat. All power to the people. End the genocide in Gaza. Free Palestine from the river to the sea. Peace.